Good afternoon, everyone. We are live and we are going to get started with reading the next section. We are going to be reading section 6 of the Nicomachean Ethics, book 2. And I'll read it first in English, then read it in Greek. I'm just checking to make sure what we got going on here is we are just reading section 6 and 7 right now. And then day after tomorrow, I plan to read the next little section. So we'll see how this goes. Starting with section 6, we're going to say the definition of virtue, which is what we've been waiting for a long time. What is the definition of virtue? So that's going to be pretty cool. Okay, this is what we got going on. It is not sufficient, however, merely to define virtue in general terms as a characteristic. We must also specify what kind of a characteristic it is. It must then be remarked that every virtue or excellence renders good the thing itself of which it is the excellence. And 2, it causes it to perform its function well. For example, the excellence of the eye makes both the eye and its function good. For good sight is due to the excellence of the eye. Likewise, the excellence of a horse makes both good as a horse and good at running. Makes it both good as a horse and good at running, at carrying its rider and at facing its enemy. Now, if this is true of all things, the virtue or excellence of man, too, will be a characteristic which makes him a good man, and which causes him to perform his own function well. To some extent, we have already stated how this will be true. The rest will become clearer if we study what the nature of virtue is. Of every continuous entity that is divisible into parts, it is possible to take the larger, the smaller, or an equal part. And these parts may be larger, smaller, or equal, either in relation to the entity itself or in relation to us. The equal part is something median between excess and deficiency. By the median of an entity, I understand a point equidistant from both extremes. And this point is one and the same for everybody. By the median relative to us, I understand an amount neither too large nor too small. And this is neither one nor the same for everybody. To take an example, if 10 is many and 2 is few, 6 is taken as the median in relation to the entity. For it exceeds and is exceeded by the same amount, and is thus the median in terms of arithmetical proposition. But the median relative to us cannot be determined in this manner. If 10 pounds of food is enough for a man to eat and 2 pounds too little, it does not follow that the trainer will prescribe 6 pounds, for this may in turn be too much or little for him to eat. It may be little for Milo and much for someone who has just begun to take up athletics. And thank you for whoever else is watching. We are reading Nicomachean Ethics, Book 2, Section 6. You can leave your comments in the chat, and I will be able to read them in between readings. I'm going to switch to read this same section now in Greek. And this one's a little bit longer, so I'm splitting it up where the paragraphs are different. So, starting with Section 6 in Greek. The mi monon utos ipin oti axis alake pietis riteon un oti pasa orati uon I orati afto te evechon apoteli ke to ergon aftu ev apothidosi ion I2 ophthalmu orati ton te ophthalmon spu theon pe ke to ergon of 2 T gar to ophthalmu orati ev oromen Homios I2 ipu orati ipon tes putheon pe ke agathon thramin ke en ankin ton epivatin ke mina tus polemius I mi tut epipondon utos echi ke I tu anthropu orati ion I exis off is agathos anthropos gignita ke ophis ev toi of 2 ergon apodosi post the two teste the men irikamen eti the ko the este phaneron eon theorisomen pia tis estin ephesis of tis en pondi the synachi ke the erato esti lamvin to men pleon to the elaton to the ison ke tafta I kadavto to pragma I prosimas to the ison meson t I pervolis ke ellipsos lego the two men pragmatos meson to ison apechon off ekateru ton akron o peristine en keto of to pasin prosimas the o mita pleonazi mita elipia elipi tuto the uk en u the tafton pasin Eon ita theka apola ta the theo oliga ta x xi mesa lamvanusi kata to pragma isogar ipar echi te ke iparekete tuto the meson esti kata tin arithmetikin analogian to the prosimas ukuto lipteo ugar I to theka mine fagin politheo the oligo the oligon o liptis xi minas prostoxi estigar isos ke tuto poli to lipsomeno I oligo miloni mengar oligon to the archomeno ton gymnasion poli homios epithromu ke polis uto the pas epistemon tin hypervolin men ke tin ellipsin fevki to the meson zt ke tooth erita meson da u to pragmatos Allah to pros imas. And thank you for whoever's watching. NTOCCO, impressive. Okay, thank you for whoever is watching in Greek. I appreciate it. And you can tell this is difficult stuff for all. It's not your etiquette and arena to curia de thomen. Let's just say that much. It's a little bit more complicated. So we're gonna switch back to English, and then we'll switch back to Greek. take this one section at a time. The same applies to running and wrestling. Thus, we see that an expert in any field avoids excess and deficiency, but seeks the median and chooses it. Not the median of the object, but the median relative to us. If this, then, is the way in which every science perfects its work, by looking to the median and by bringing its work up to that point, and this is the reason why it is usually said of a successful piece of work that it is impossible to detract from it or to add to it, the implication being that excess and deficiency destroy success, while the mean safeguards it. Good craftsmen, we say, look toward this standard in the performance of their work. And if virtue, like nature, is more precise and better than any art, we must conclude that virtue aims at the median. I am referring to moral virtue, for it is moral virtue that is concerned with emotions and actions, and it is in emotions and actions that excess, deficiency, and the median are found. Thus, we can experience fear, confidence, desire, anger, pity, and generally any kind of pleasure and pain, either too much or too little, and in either case, not properly. But to experience all this at the same time, toward the right objects, toward the right people, and for the right reason, and in the right manner, that is the median and the best course, the course that is the mark of virtue. Similarly, excess, deficiency, and the median can also be found in actions. Now, virtue is concerned with emotions and actions. And in emotions and actions, excess and deficiency miss the mark. Whereas the median is praised and constitutes success. But both praise and success are signs of virtue or excellence. Consequently, virtue is a mean in the sense that it aims at the median. This is corroborated by the fact that there are many ways of going wrong, but only one way which is right. For evil belongs to the indeterminate, as the Pythagoreans imagined, but good to the determinate. This, by the way, is also the reason why the one is easy and the other hard. It is easy to miss the target, but hard to hit it. Here, then, is an additional proof that excess and deficiency characterize vice, while the mean characterizes virtue. For bad men have many ways, good men but one. Okay, we're going to switch back to Greek for paragraph 1106b before we go on to 1107a. Ivi pasa epistemi uto to ergon ev epiteli prostomeson vlepusa ke is tuto agusa ta erga uthen eothesin epilegin tis evacusin ergis oti ut apheline estin ute Prosthena. Os tis men hypervolis, ke tis ellipseos, ophthirusis toev. Tis themistotitos, sozousis. Either agathi technite, os legamen, pros tuto vlepundes, ergazonde. Either orati, pasis technis, acrivus stera, ke aminon estin, osperke e feces, to mesu on e stokastiki. Legodatin ethikin, oftigar esti peripathi ke praxis, and the tutis estin hyper voli, ke ellipsis, ke tomeson, eon ke fovithina, ke theresa, ke epithemisa, ke orgisthina, ke eleisa, ke olos isthina, ke lipithina, esti, ke malon, ke eton, ke amphotera, ev. To the ota the, ke is, ke pros, ke uenica, ke os the, meson te, ke Aristotle, osperestid, tis, aratis. Omios the, ke peritas praxis, estin, hypervoli, ke ellipsis, ke tomeson. E the arati, peripathi, ke praxis, estin. En is emen hypervoli, amortanata, ke e ellipsis, segata. To the meson, epenita, ke kat orthunda. Tafta the ampho, tis aratis. Mesotis tis, aura estin, e aratis, stokastiki, geusa to mesu. Etito men amartanin polarchosistin, togar kakon to apirgu. Apiru signomi. Os e Pythagorii e kazon, to the agathon, to peperas menu, to the katorthun monacos. The o to men radion, to the galapon, radion men, to apotikin, to scopu. Galapon the to epitikin. Ke the ataft un tis men kakias e hypervoli ke ellipsis tis tharatis e mesotis. As the men garaplos pond o the post the kaki. And thank you for whoever is watching. We're switching back to English for that poem. And I believe this was bad men have many ways, good men but one. Let me read that again in Greek because it was in hexameter. It's esthli men garoplos pondopopos thekaki. Okay. Good hexameter going on for us. Bad men have many ways, good men but one. And actually, in Greek, that was backwards. Good men but one, bad men have many ways. Okay, let's finish off section 6 then before we start section 7. English first, we may thus conclude that virtue or excellence is a characteristic involving choice, and that it consists in observing the mean relative to us. A mean which is defined by a rational principle, such as a man of practical wisdom would use to determine it. It is the mean by reference to two vices, the one of excess, the other of deficiency. It is, moreover, a mean because some vices exceed and others fall short of what is required in emotion and in action, whereas virtue finds and chooses the median. Hence, in respect to its essence and the definition of the essential nature, virtue is a mean. But in regard to goodness and excellence, it is an extreme. Not every action nor every emotion admits of a mean. There are some actions and emotions whose very names connotate baseness, e.g., exemplia gratia, spite, shamelessness, envy, and among actions, adultery, theft, and murder. These and similar emotions and actions imply that their very names applied by their very names that they are bad. It is not their excess nor their deficiency which is called bad. It is therefore impossible ever to do good in performing them. To perform them is always to do wrong. In cases of this sort, let us say adultery. Rightness and wrongness do not depend on committing it with the right woman in the right time and in the right manner, but the mere fact of committing such action at all is to do wrong. It would be just as absurd to suppose that there is a mean and excess and a deficiency in an unjust or cowardly or self-indulgent act. For if there were, we would have a mean of excess and a mean of deficiency, and an excess and deficiency of deficiency, just as there cannot be an excess of and a deficiency of self-control and courage. Because the intermediate is, in a sense, an extreme. So there cannot be a mean, excess, and deficiency in their respective opposites. Their opposites are wrong regardless of how they are performed. For in general, there is no such thing as the mean of an excess or a deficiency, or the excess and deficiency of a mean. All right, thank you very much for whoever's watching. I just finished section 6 in English, and I'm about to do the same in Greek before we continue on with section 7. Feel free to comment in the chat, and I will answer questions or read the chat in between readings. So without further ado, we will finish section 7 in Greek before I continue on. Estin aura iarati exis pro eretiki en mesotiti usa ti pros imas orismeni logo ke o on o phronimos orisian mesotis the diokakion tis men kath hypervolin tis kat ellipsin ke eti totas men elipin has the hypervolin to theondos entes pathesi ke entes praxisi teen the oratin to meson ke every skin ke arista the o katat mentin usian ke ton logon ton to tiin ina lagonda mesoti sistine e orati kata the to ariston ke to ev acrotis u passa the epidecata praxis u the pon pathos teen mesotita en yagar efthes onomaste sinilimena metatis favlotitos eon epihierarchia on eskindia thonos ke epiton proxios michia clopi androphonia pondagartofta ke tatiafta legata tofta favlaina all uk a hypervole of tone uth a ellipsis uk estin un vapota peri of ta katorthun alla ai amortanin esti to ev e mi ev peri ta tiafta en to in v keos mikevin all aplos to pien otiun two-tone amortanin estin Omion un to oxion, que perito adicin, que vilenin, que acolastenin ina mesotita, que hypervolin, que ellipsin estigar uto, ge hypervolis, que ellipseos mesotis, que hypervoli, que ellipseos. Osper the Sophrosinis, que Andreas, uk estin hypervoli, que ellipsis, dia to Tomasonina, pos acron, utos, the kinon mesotis, the hypervoli, que ellipsis, all os on pratita, amortanita, Oloscar uth hypervolis, que ellipseos, mesotis estin, utamesotitos, hypervoli, que ellipses. And that is the end of section 6 of the Nicomachean Ethics, Book 1. And we will continue with section 7 of Nicomachean Ethics, Book 1. And thank you for whoever is watching. I will answer questions in the chat or comment on that in between readings. And so I am ready to start section 7, examples of the mean and particular virtues. However, this general statement is not enough. We must also show that it fits particular instances. For in a discussion of moral actions, although general statements have a wider range of application, statements on particular points have more truth in them. Actions are concerned with particulars, and our statements must harmonize with them. Let us now make particular virtues. Thank you for whoever's in the chat. Let us now take particular virtues and vices from the following table. I think I will actually. I say this is the beginning of paragraph 1107b, so I'm going to switch to Greek, and I'll keep switching on the paragraph markers like this because this is a little bit of a longer section. The tuto mi monon katholu legasta, Allah katis kath ekasta ev ar motin, engartis perritas praxis logis, men katholu kinoteriisin, either epimerus ali thinoteri. Perigarta kath ekasta a praxis, Deon the epituton symphonin. And switch back to English after that paragraph marker. Paragraph, we are at 1107b. And if you want to follow along, you can always find Aristotle's work, 1107b, not just Nicomachean Ethics, Book 2, Section 7. You can also just find 1107b. And this is the only 1107b in Aristotle's work. So I will pick up at 1107b. In feelings of fear and confidence, courage is the mean. As for the excesses, there is no name that describes a man who exceeds in fearlessness. Many virtues and vices have no name, but a man who exceeds in confidence is reckless, and a man who exceeds in fear is deficient in confidence. He is a coward. In general, in regard to pleasures and pains, not all of them to a lesser degree. In the case of pains, the mean is self-control, and the excess self-indulgence. Men deficient in regard to pleasure are not often found, and there is therefore no name for them, but let us call them insensitive. In giving and taking money, the mean is generosity. The excess and deficiency are extravagance and stinginess. In these vices, excess and deficiency work in opposite ways. An extravagant man exceeds in spending and is deficient in taking, while a stingy man exceeds in taking and is deficient in spending. For our present purposes, we may rest content with an outline and a summary, but we shall later define these qualities more precisely. There are also some other dispositions in regard to money. Magnificence is a mean, for there is a difference between a magnificent and a generous man, in that the former operates on a large scale, the latter on a small scale. Gaudiness and vulgarity are excesses, and niggardliness a deficiency. These vices differ from the vices opposite to generosity. But we shall postpone until later a discussion of the way in which they differ. As regards honor and dishonor, the mean is high-mindedness. The excess is what we call vanity, and the deficiency, small-mindedness. The same relation which, as we said, exists between magnificence and generosity, the one being distinguished from the other in that it operates on a small scale, exists also between high-mindedness and another virtue. As the former deals with great, so the latter deals with small honors. For it is possible to desire honor as one should, or more than one should, or less than one should. A man who exceeds in his desires is called ambitious. A man who is deficient, unambitious. But there is no name for a man in the middle. There are likewise no names for the corresponding dispositions, except for the disposition of an ambitious man, which is called ambition. As a result, the men who occupy the extremes lay calm in the middle position. Okay, that is the end of 1107b, and this section will conclude on 1108A and 1108B. So we'll read those two sections before we're going to finish this stream. So let's jump back to the Greek and finish that paragraph marker. Okay, if I can find my place. Okay, there I am. Lipteon un tafta ectis theographis, perimen un fovus cathari Andrea mesotis. Tonda hypervolondon omen t ophobia anonymos Palada estin anonyma. O the entotharine hypervolon thrasis. O the into men fovista hypervolon. To the tharine lipon dilos. Peri idon nas the kelipas. Peri idon nas the kelipas. Upasas eton the ke peritas lipas, mesotis, men sophrosini, hypervoli the acolasia. Elipondes the peritas idonas, upani gignanda, the oper onomatos titikikasin, ud e tiuti asotsan the anestiti. Peri the thosin crematon ke li mesotis men eleftheriotis hypervoli the ke ellipsis asotia ke aneleftheria. Anandios the anaptes hypervolusin ke elipusin. Omengar asotos and men proesi hypervoli and the leipsi elipi. Oh, the oneleftheros and men leipsi hypervoli and the proesi elipi. Nin men un tipo ke epikephaleu legamen. Arcumeni afto tuto. Esteron the acrivesteron peri of tone the oristhesita. Peri the cremata ke ala the athesis isin. Mesotis men megaloprepia ogar megaloprepis theopheri eleftherio. O mengar peri megala o the peri mikra. Hypervolida up Irocalia ke von of Sia ellipses the microprepia the pharisee the avtotone peritin eleftheriotita pida the pharisine Easteron rethesita Parida timin, keatimian, mesotis men, megalopsychia, hypervolida, chanotis tis legomeni, ellipsis the micropsychia, osta elegomen, echin, prostin megaloprepion, tin eleftheriotita, to paris micra, Theopharuson, utos echi tis ke prostin megalopsychion, peritimin uson megalin afti peri mikron usa. Estigar os the oregista timis ke malon ethi ke eton. Legate the omen hypervolon tes orexisi Philotimos, o the elipon, philotimos, o the mesos, anonymos. Anonymi the, ke the athesis, plin itu philotimu, philotimia. Othen epi the kazonda, iacri tis mesis horas. Ke imis, the estin, emis the estin men otaton meson philotimon columen. Emis columen. Oh, emis the estin men otaton meson philotimon columen esti the oti aphilotimon ke esti men oti apenumen ton philotimon esti the oti ton philotimon. Okay, and we're going to jump back to the English to get to 1108b and read it in 1108a. We're going to read it in English and we're going to read it in Greek before we conclude our stream for today. And I see that there's been quite a bit of commenting in the chat. So we can just see, for example, I see Ian understand. Hi, how are you? Sup? Ian understand. That's cool. Cool to hear someone talk. All right. Heard out. Thanos shout out, please. So shout out to Calm Oh, man, suggest you drink water. I can see that you've been reading for far too long. I do have my water and I'm almost done. Thank you. And so, yes, thank you for whoever's watching. And that's the correct pronunciation. And yes, I mean my only request is that you not be too nitpicky about my American accent. I don't mind if a native Greek person is to read English with a Greek accent, as long as you guys don't mind that I read your Greek language with my American accent. But I'm at least going to do my best. So thank you very much for your encouragement. And I only got section 1108A and 1108B to do before we finish this section. So bear with me. And if you have more to say in the chat, I will jump back in the chat again once I switch between paragraphs. We ourselves, in fact, sometimes call the middle person ambitious and sometimes unambitious. Sometimes we praise an ambitious and at other times an unambitious man. The reason why we do that will be discussed in the sequel. For the present, let us discuss the rest of the virtues and vices along the lines we have indicated. In regard to anger, also there exists an excess and a deficiency, and a mean. Although there really are no names for them, we might call the mean gentleness, since we call a man who occupies the middle position gentle. Of the extremes, let the man who exceeds be called short-tempered, and his vice a short temper, and the deficient man apathetic. And his vice apathy. There are further 3 other means which have a certain similarity with one another, but differ nonetheless one from the other. They are all concerned with human relations in speech and action, but they differ in that one of them is concerned with truth in speech and action, and the other 2 with pleasantness. Pleasantness in amusement and pleasantness in all our daily activity in daily life. We must include these 2 in our discussion in order to see more clearly that the mean is to be praised in all things and that the extremes are neither praiseworthy nor right, but are blameworthy. Here too, most of the virtues and vices have no name, but for the sake of clarity and easier comprehension, we must try to coin names for them as we did in earlier instances. To come to the point in regard to truth, let us call the man in the middle position truthful, and the mean truthfulness. Pretense in the form of exaggeration is boastful, and the possessor is boastful, while pretense in the form of understatement is self-depreciation, and the possessor is a self-depreciator. Concerning pleasantness and amusement, the man in the middle position is witty, and his disposition wittiness. The excess of call is called buffoonery, and its possessor a buffoon. And the deficient man a kind of bore, and the corresponding characteristic of boorishness. As far as the other kind of pleasantness is concerned, pleasantness in our daily life, a man who is pleasant as he should be is friendly, and the mean is friendliness. A man who exceeds is called obsequious, and if he has no particular purpose in being pleasant, or if he has no particular purpose in being pleasant, but if he is acting for his own material advantage, he is a flatterer. And a man who is deficient in unpleasant in every aspect is quarrelsome and a grouchy kind of person. A mean can also be found in our emotional experiences and in our emotions. Thus, while a sense of shame is not a virtue, a bashful or modest man is praised. For even if these matters, for even in these matters, we speak of one kind of person as intermediate and another as exceeding if he is terror stricken and abashed at everything. On the other hand, a man who is deficient in shame or has none at all is called shameless, whereas the intermediate man is bashful or modest. Okay, so that is the end of that section. I'm going to check the chat out again. I see there's been a few more things that were said. So we can look in the chat, and then I will finish the Greek again, and then we have one last paragraph before we're ending this. So we have here, can you tell me a bit about the what the book's about? Great love from Gavin. So thank you, Gavin. So this is Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. This is one of the most famous books that Aristotle wrote on ethics. And what's interesting is there is a dialogue here that is by Plato, and it's Plato's Meno, M-E-N-O. And that dialogue is talking about, is virtue teachable? And unfortunately, Socrates claims he didn't even know how to define virtue. He says, I don't know what virtue is. I really don't even know what virtue is, and I don't know if it's even teachable. And Meno says, seriously, you don't know what virtue is. I think everybody knows what virtue is. And Socrates goes on to say, well, okay, say that we could define something like color. There's, one color blue, one color red, one color green. All these colors are talking about a certain unifying factor. And if I say wanted to define color, couldn't I say that it is the object? Okay, I'm doing this off the top of my head. He says that it's the object that immediately follows sight or something like that, or in relationship to a solid. And Meno seems to agree in some of the definitions. Yes, we can define what color is. There's a unifying factor. All colors have some unifying factor that they have in common. Painting, there's something in common with painting or ship making. Everybody is doing the same thing. So then with virtue, the question is, how do you define virtue? And Plato and his dialogue has Socrates and Meno basically coming up with the conclusion that they cannot define virtue because, as Meno says, he thinks that virtue is different for a man and for a woman. That man's virtue is to be good to the city and just among the city and manage the city well. But for a woman, it's to be a ruler of her own house and to judge her house very well. And that there's a different type of virtue for a man than for a woman. And then Socrates says, and what about for a slave? Is the slave also supposed to be judging other human beings? And he says, no, there's also a different virtue for a slave. And so this is something that is problematic, because then Socrates says, so what is virtue? Because you can't say that virtue is different for a man and for a slave and for a husband and for a child. We have to have one unifying factor that unites all virtue to define it. And Meno could not think of anything that defined virtue that had a unifying factor that could be the same to determine a man's virtue and a woman's virtue and a slave's virtue and a child's virtue. And Socrates says he couldn't figure it out either. That's why I asked the question. And so they really can't figure out, how do we even define virtue? And then if we wanted somebody to teach virtue, how are we going to find a teacher of virtue? And they don't conclude that they can. And Socrates says maybe it's a divine gift, but maybe it's not actually something that can be taught. So that is where Plato kind of left us hanging in his dialogue Meno. Maybe virtue is not teachable, and maybe we can't even define what virtue is. And so Aristotle, being the little smart aleck, wants to be smarter than his teacher. And now he's actually defining what virtue is. And so what we've read so far in Nicomachean Ethics, Book 2, from the beginning up till now, is that virtue is a characteristic, and it's the median of two extremes. One extreme is excess on the one hand, the other is deficiency. So say that you eat too much, you're excessive, you're gluttonous, you eat too little, you're detrimental to your health. Find that median in the middle, and it's not the same for everybody. So for instance, say 10 pounds of food is too much for Milo, and say 2 pounds is not enough for him. That does not mean that we need to say 6 pounds of food is what everybody needs to eat, because that's not going to be the same for everybody. It's going to be important for everybody to find their own average and their own median. So that is to answer the question, what the book is about. Next, what it's 4 in the morning here in India. Oh, okay. So yes, thank you for watching from India. It is 5:52 in the middle of Kentucky. What's your favorite philosopher, and how can we super chat? That's a good question. I may have got my super chat taken away because because I didn't have enough people watching my channel, and I think they changed the statistics, so you have to have more view time. I have the subscriber limit, but I don't think I have the amount of watch time and views per month or per whatever it's basing it off of. And because of that, I don't know. I used to have super chat, but I think now with the new statistics, they don't have it. So thank you for suggesting, donating, but unfortunately, super chat is not an option. I used to work for Xfinity. Cool. Okay, so you can feel free to keep commenting in the chat. I have a few more sections to read, and so I'm going to continue. But I will continue to answer questions and check the chat in between. I think I'll have 3 more back and forth, so feel free to continue to comment. And now I will do my best to jump back to the Greek. Oh, sorry. My favorite philosopher, I would have to say Socrates. Definitely love Socrates. But again, it's hard to just say there's one favorite philosopher. I would say Socrates is my favorite philosopher, but then Plato wrote about him. So through Plato, Socrates, and then Xenophon, if you could call him a philosopher, he's in the Lives of the Eminent Philosophers. So yeah, Xenophon also. I like him, and I've read a lot of his works. So I would say at least those guys. Aristotle, I'm reading him right now. We'll throw that in there too. I also would say Zeno of Kidium, I think is where he's from. Zeno, the father of Stoic philosophy. And Epicurus, not going to lie, he's not too terrible either. I actually think Diogenes is pretty cool, Diogenes the Sinope. So actually, I'd say I kind of have a liking to all the Greek philosophers, all the major ones. There's a part of my heart where I just kind of like all of them the other place, and I kind of like all of them. What about Immanuel Kant? So I never really got too interested in him. I like Rene Descartes, Discourse on the Method. I really love the Cogito Ergo Sum. That is like unbelievable. I like John Stuart Mill. I really love his utilitarianism and On Liberty. I don't agree with everything he teaches, but I do really like John Stuart Mill. I like the Cartesian coordinate system too, and I like, negative b plus or minus square root of b squared over, what is it? Negative b plus or minus the square root of, I know this, negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Exactly. Negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I believe that's correct. And so anyways, Rene Descartes, phenomenal. I love all of his works, including his mathematical works. And he wrote a lot of everything in Latin, which I try to read. I don't know about the French. And then, thank you. And then as far as it goes, Immanuel Kant, I don't know. He's the guy I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I listened to a scholarly talk in December, and somebody was trying to critique Kant's work. It was actually Hegel, but it was something with Kant and Hegel, and this philosopher or philosophy student or professor, I don't know what you call it, maybe a PhD student, was trying to do some kind of dissertation speech. I had absolutely no clue what she was saying. Absolutely no clue. So I think Hegel and Immanuel Kant, I don't understand. I'd have to really get some specific training. And then what do we say? What about Ezra Noctix? Not sure that I've heard about that. So yeah, basically my answer is that I have no idea about Immanuel Kant. I have his critique on reason, and I just don't get it. Are you majoring in philosophy? Unfortunately, no. I am not a philosophy major. I have absolutely no degree in philosophy, but I have a degree in classics, and I am working on a master's degree in classics. So my current philosophy class counts toward my master's degree in classics. And no, my professor did not say I had to read it in Greek. This is me being a little bit of a nerd. And so I'm reading my Nicomachean ethics the long way around in English and Greek, just because otherwise I don't think I would have I don't think that I would have I wouldn't be reading it in Greek anytime soon. So this is my one chance to read it in Greek and have some kind of motivation and reason. And no, I don't know anything about Roland Aurelius. I knew who Marcus Aurelius is and read his meditations. I like Marcus Aurelius. He's one of my favorite emperors, but I don't know about Roland Aurelius. I'm assuming this is somebody in more recent years. Again, let me continue reading. Love the comments, and you can keep them up. I will read the section in Greek. Give me about 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'll jump back to the chat. The Atina, Tina the Aetion, tuto piumen, entis exis rethesita. Ninde perit ton lipon legomen, kata ton ifigi manon tropon, esti the ke peritin orgin, hypervoli ke ellipsis ke mesotis, schedon the anonymon, ondon of ton meson praon legondes, tin mesotita praotita colosomen, ton the acron omen hypervalon or gilos esto, either kakia or gilotis, o the elipon a or tos, tis. Either ellipsis a or gisia, isi the ke alitris mesotites, ecusamen tina o miotita pros alilas, the ferusa the alilon. Pasamengar sin perilogon ke proxion kinonion. The Pharisee the oti imenesti peri alithes to anaftis, the perito idi. To the toman and pedia to the and pasitis kata ton vion. Riteon the signomi riteonun ke perituton inamalon kativamen oti en pasin emesotis epineton epineton, not epineteo, epineton. Ta the acra ut epineta ut ortha ala secta. Isimenun ke tuton ta plio anonyma perirateon the osper ke epiton alon utos avtus signomi avtus onoma pien onomatopein signomi onomatopoein, Saphinias enka, K2 ev parakoluthitu, Perimen un tolithes, omen mesos alithistis, K mesotis alithia legesto, the prospices, epitomizon, alazonia, K oeconaftin, alazon, the epitoelaton, ironia, K iron oecon, peritheto ev, tomen en pavia, omen mesos, evtrapelos, K diathesis, evtrapelia, either hypervoli vomologia, K o econ of teen vomolocos, o the elipon agricostis, K exis agricia, perida to lipon to entovio, omen os the evis, on philos, K mesotis philia, o the hypervolon, imenu the no Seneca, Oriscos, either Ophelias, Tis of 2, Colox, o the Elipon, K Pasina, these the Seristis, K Discalos. C the K and Tis Pathimasi, K Peri ta Pathi Mesotites. Igor those are T men uk esti epenita the ko themon. Kagar and tutis omen legatum mesos o the hypervolon os o cataplix o ponda thumenos o the elipon me then olos aneskindos o the mesos themon. Okay, so that is the end of section A. So we're going to switch back to section B. One comment before I read the chat is that I actually saw here the word diskolos, and I don't remember seeing this in ancient Greek before. Halopos for difficult. I was thinking of diskolos more of a modern Greek word for difficult. Diskolos keevkolos instead of rathios and Rathios and Kolopos. So I thought that was interesting. These colors. I'll have to. I don't know if I have a good pen to mark it. I'm gonna actually check this out for how many times does these kolos appear in ancient Greek compared to modern Greek. That might be an interesting study. So this is our last section. So I'll jump to the chat before we do the final section in English and the final section in Greek. And let's see. We have here, are you majoring in philosophy? I already answered that. You must know Aurelius Aurelius. I'll have to, Roland Aurelius, have to check it out. And then got to go by. Love your stream. Thank you so much, Gavin. And 6-7. So just to let you know, my name on my channel, Nathaniel Kuchenberg. This is my last name. If you go and you do a Google search for a guy named Bob Kuchenberg, he was a quarterback for the Miami Dolphins back in the day. And funny enough, his number was number 67. So he was a football player with that number. That's my dad's first cousin, Bob Kuchenberg. He is 67, number 67, before 6'7" was a thing, if you want to call it that. So a little heads up on 6'7" in the history that I have a football player cousin who's unfortunately deceased, and he was number 67 back in the day. Okay, last little section. Righteous indignation is the mean between envy and spite, all of these being concerned with the pain and pleasure which we feel in regard to the fortunes of our neighbors. The right the righteously indignant man feels pain when someone prospers undeservedly. An envious man exceeds him in that he is pained when he sees anyone prosper. And a spiteful man is so deficient in feeling pain that he even rejoices when someone suffers undeservedly. But we shall have an opportunity to deal with these matters again somewhere else. After that, we shall discuss justice, since it has more than one meaning. We shall distinguish the two kinds of justice and show in what way each is a mean. And that is the end of section 7 in English of Nicomachean Ethics, book 2. You will finish off the Greek with the last teeny tiny bit of section 7, starting with Nemesis. Okay, starting with the arch nemesis. Okay, Nemesis the Mesotes, Phthonu ke epi Herakakias, Esti the Perilipin ke Idonin, Tas epi tis Simvenisi, tis Pelas Ginomenas. O Mengar Nemesitikos, Lipita, Epitis Onyxios, Ev Pratusin. O the Phthoneros, Hypervolon, Tuton Epiposin Lipita. O the Epicherekakos, Tosuton, Elipi, to Lipista, Ostake Kering. Alla perimentuton ke alothi keros este, peri the dikiosinis, epi aplos legatet, metatafta the olegomeny, signomi, then the olegomeny. The Lomany. Peri ekateras erumen pos mesotites isin, omios the ke periton logikon araton. And so that is the end of our book 2, section 7 of the Nicomachean Ethics. And if you are subscribed to my channel, please put on the notifications. I have scheduled this out in the future that I will be continuing to read accordingly on not tomorrow, but on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. It'll show you up on your channel what that's going to be. You can turn the bell on to notify yourself, and I will do my best to have the schedule. So I will be reading at a set time for the next 3 weeks. We're going to get a good deal of the Nicomachean Ethics down. You're going to see that I'm going to skip several sections. You're going to say, why would I skip like the first half of book 3? Am I being crazy? No, I'm following my professor's syllabus, okay? And so what the plan is going to be is follow the syllabus, chop out the things that need to be chopped out to follow his syllabus well. And then after I finish my semester, once the summer kicks in and I got some time and I'm bored, I will try to do my best to come back and read all those missing sections that I skipped, save it in my playlist in the right spot, in the right place, so that it does line up with the right section. So I'm going to end up potentially reading the entire Nicomachean Ethics from cover to cover in Greek. And I don't know if I'll be the only one to have done this in the world, but I'm at least going to be the first and only person to put this on YouTube as a live stream in English and Greek. So yoo-hoo for that. Not to say that the reading is perfect by any means. Not to say I don't make any mistakes. Of course I do. But this is another method that I kind of like, where I'm just reading it aloud with the mistakes and everything. At least I'm going to say that I've read the entire Nicomachean Ethics. And I don't know if anybody else has done that. So that's the goal. Read the whole thing, not just sections, not just translate sections, not just talk about the grammar, but just read the entire thing and say that we read it. And if you want to follow along, that's cool. If you want to just listen, that's also cool. This is a stream that can meet multiple purposes. One purpose is you can also listen to it. And when I'm reading it in Greek, you can actually look at the English translation, see if you can follow along, looking at the English, listening to the Greek, or vice versa. Listen to me saying the English and you try to look at the Greek. Or if you just don't know Greek at all, you can completely tune out the Greek, and that's okay too. So thank you all for watching. I will cut it off there. Thank you again for subscribing to my channel and a lot of good stuff in the chat. So thank you again. Till later, I will say adieu and filia.